There were a lot of misconceptions I had about Germany before I got there, and part of that had to do with my lack of research. Um, One thing I totally didn't have a perspective on was the weather in Germany. I thought it was going to be like a constant 60 in the summer and then just snow in the winter. Um, and I was right about the snow. It was more like slush than snow. I was wrong about the summers. The summers are kind of like the South in the United States. They're very, very hot and humid. And if you're in the city, you have like buildings and stuff with windows. You get that sun reflected down. It makes the streets nice and toasty. So I wasn't really prepared with. I had like maybe one short sleeve shirt when I came out there. You're probably going to want to bring more than that, as well as some breathable pants because yeah, it gets hot. The winters it gets pretty cold too, and you should bring some shoes that can handle the cold. I wouldn't bring boots because they kind of have a negative connotation in Germany, at least with the elders, kind of with Germany's history and the problems it's had in the past. That kind of just doesn't give off a good vibe when you're walking around wearing boots and in a suit and tie. But that was one of the things that really threw me off was the weather, and I probably could have been a lot more comfortable if I had been prepared and done my research. One of the other things I didn't expect was the food. I kind of had this stereotype in my mind of Europe being this very proper place where people eat their food in a dainty manner and eat like 8-course meals or something like that. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. My first meal actually ended up being that way. And every other meal after that didn't end up being that way. So I got to Germany and I sat down to eat, and there were like 6 different kinds of spoons and like a couple different kinds of forks and 2 knives. And I wasn't really sure how to approach that. That doesn't usually happen, but sometimes it can. So what I learned was the silverware, you work from the inside out, and you use the knife in your left or your right hand and your fork in your left, unless you're not using the knife, in which case you can use your right hand for the fork. That's kind of the convention. So you learn to eat with your left hand. So if you're not left-handed, try eating left-handed for a little while, and then when you get to Germany, you won't drop your fork like I did. It was good. The members tend to feed you really well. One of the other things about food in Germany that's a lot different than what I was used to. I always grew up where you were eating what was given to you, and if you only had 2 options, take it or leave it. In Germany, I saw like there were some families where the children would say, "I don't want this, make something else," and the person who made the meal was expected to entertain that request and make it happen. And I think that's kind of part of the hospitality of Germany. The mother figure actually plays a more prominent role in the society there and in the culture, especially within the home. And so she's kind of expected to make people happy, and it's done at no small sacrifice. So I think being grateful is kind of the most important thing. I don't think I tried any dish I didn't like in Germany, though. So if you're not a super picky eater, you'll be just fine with what they give you. And the food's really delicious. They really do do a good job of making the missionaries feel like they're welcome and they're important. And um, that they're valued. On that note, since they go to so much effort to preparing good food for you, you're expected to give a spiritual thought to them at the end of each meal. And they expect some thought to go into that. Just opening to random scripture doesn't give off a good impression. And the members need to know just as much as investigators do that you know your stuff and that you're passionate about the gospel. And that's how most Germans tend to lighten up, is when they recognize what you want and what your passions and desires and goals are for your mission. And so it might be helpful to clearly make those, set those in your mind before you leave. What exactly you want to accomplish as a missionary, whether that be memorize 25 scriptures or make 5 lifelong friends, or whatever it is. And as you share your goals with members and investigators, they will share their goals with you. And that's when you start to work together to accomplish them. And sometimes those goals don't necessarily lead to baptism, but they do lead to the positive changes that need to take place for it. Like, for example, giving up smoking. We knew a man who had been smoking for 30 years, and he made the decision to quit when we were with him. I'm not sure if he actually did it, but it was neat to see the change that came over him when he actually decided that that was something he actually wanted to give up, and that was his goal. And usually when Germans get a goal set in their mind, they pursue it to the utmost. And that's true with your investigators as well. If they get excited about the gospel and they have goals associated with the gospel, such as getting baptized or learning about Joseph Smith, they will commit to it and they will go with it as much as they can. And it's really neat to see the drive that can take place when Germans start to get comfortable with you. And other general stuff, as far as transportation goes, you have a lot of options. There are buses and trains and streetcars and bikes in some apartments. That might have changed since I was there. They might have gotten bikes for all the apartments, but there's a lot of opportunities for transport. My experience was the best kinds of transport was the kinds that allowed you to interact with people. You could talk to a lot more people when you're on a train or on a bus than when you're riding your bike, or sometimes even walking. And I think, I guess some other advice as far as your proselyting goes, people don't tend to stay awake for very long. They're not all-nighters. And so around 8 o'clock, people stop answering doorbells and knocking on the door. And they tend to not appreciate it when people disturb them after that time. And so it's important to kind of gauge that and to know when it's appropriate and when it's not. You want to maintain a good image of the church and do your best to condition yourself to be a part of that culture. And I think smiling is also big. Germans tend to always have a frown on their face, and if you're smiling, that can help lighten things up. You need to make sure it's a genuine smile, though. You can't put on a huge cheesy grin and expect Germans to all of a sudden trust you. You have to maybe crack a light joke or talk about something interesting or funny, and or do something interesting or funny, but not too over the top. And that gets people's attention, and they'll want to know what you have to say. I had one companion who thought it would be cool to get some sidewalk chalk and draw the plan of salvation on the ground until people started asking about what it was. And that was just one example of something that helped get people's attention. And they do ask. They're Germans are very curious people, and they like to know about things. So they'll ask about everything, and it's up to you to tell them. And yeah, it's a pretty neat experience to be able to tell them and to research questions that they have, and to really kind of get into their head and learn what drives them and what motivates them, and how they see themselves and where they see themselves.